In this presentation, we're going to look at receptive skills, that's reading and listening, at intermediate levels, focusing specifically on B1 level. In Part 1, we will look at the nature of reading and listening at B1 in relation to CEFR descriptors. In Parts 2 and 3, we will look at how this relates to the respective constructs of reading and listening at intermediate levels, and how the associated subskills are defined and conceptualized. In Part 4, we will look at some sample items from both skills and consider how B1 level items work in practice. In this section, we will consider the nature of receptive skills at intermediate levels, in particular as they are conceptualized in the CEFR. We will look at descriptors for both reading and listening and consider the main implications for our purposes as item writers. In the CEFR, language users are divided into the umbrella categories of basic user, independent user, and proficient user. The independent user category is subdivided into B1 and B2 level. Concerning the receptive skills, at this intermediate level, descriptors begin referring to longer texts and to a more global rather than a mere local level of understanding. However, this presentation focuses only on B1 level, because B1 items are quite distinct on their own and bring with them their own specific considerations and challenges. On this slide, we can see CEFR descriptors for reading at A2 and B1 level. Although the focus of this presentation is B1 level, it is useful to compare the descriptors with A2 in order to get a sense of the progression and expected evolution in ability. At A2 level, the focus is on short, simple texts containing high-frequency vocabulary. At B1 level, however, the gear shifts to longer texts. Importantly, the B1 descriptors here refer to a satisfactory level of understanding of text-level input. At lower levels, users are expected to demonstrate comprehension at sentence level only. This is a critical point to remember for the purposes of producing B1 items. On this slide, we can see the CEFR descriptors for listening. Again, we will compare descriptors for A2 and B1 in order to get a sense of expected progression. As with reading, the emphasis at B1 is again on comprehension at a more global text level, as long as the input is sufficiently straightforward. The expectation is that users will understand both general points, i.e., across the text, as well as specific details. Based upon the CEFR descriptors, on this slide we will now consider some key considerations for item writers as they produce reading and listening items at B1 level. As we have discussed, target information should be integrated at a more holistic text level. Typically, this means that the key should not be contained within a single sentence or utterance, but rather should be integrated more throughout. Typically, at B1, the key is based upon cumulative information that progresses from one sentence to the next. Answering correctly depends upon having understood the whole. For this reason, although information at B1 is still fairly concrete and factual in nature, item writers should avoid concrete information that would naturally be contained within a single sentence, utterance, or adjacency pair. For example, what time does the train leave? 9 a.m. Trying to integrate information such as this across multiple turns would simply be inauthentic. It is important, therefore, to be able to utilize strategies in order to avoid simple lexical matching. Paraphrasing and targeting propositional meaning, or meaning across the text, are common ways to do this. We also notice at B1 level that topics are less rooted in the purely personal domain and are discussed in a wider sense. In this section, we will look in more detail at the construct of reading. This is the Khalifa and Weir framework. It is a conceptual framework of the cognitive reading process. In other words, a visual representation of what is happening inside someone's head as they read. It is widely used in language testing. Starting with visual input, i.e. the text, it progresses through lexical access, to grammatical understanding, to establishing meaning. Higher level skills would then include skills such as inferencing. On the right-hand side is the pre-existing knowledge that a person brings to their reading and interpretation of a text, including linguistic knowledge and topic knowledge. This is a simplified version of that same visual. This visual shows how the different stages of the framework are appropriate at different levels. As we have discussed, at B1 level, the focus shifts from integrating and targeting information at word or sentence level to paragraph and text level comprehension. We will see this in practice when we look at some example items. In this section, we will look in more detail at the construct of listening. For testing purposes, the input recording is still referred to as the text. In many regards, it is not dissimilar to the reading process. For example, lower-level processes focus more on understanding input at phrase level. The test taker will still interpret a text relative to their own pre-existing world knowledge and experience. However, questions unique to listening include issues such as whether to allow the test taker to listen to the text once or twice. Audio-only or video format is another important area. In the context of Aptis, the input is audio only, and the test takers can usually listen to a text twice. Accent and comprehensibility of the speaker pose further issues, and the extent to which accent familiarity is relevant to the target construct. A less familiar accent could make the initial decoding stage more challenging, even for proficient users. We will now look at some sample reading and listening items at B1 level and consider how they work in practice. We suggest you pause the video at each slide in order to consider what makes them suitable at B1 level. We will look at 2 listening B1 MCQ items, and also consider the Vox Pop task. In Aptis, Vox Pops are used both in reading and listening at B1 level. A Vox Pop is a short, paragraph-length text, such as you might see in an online comment section or contribution to a radio phone-in. This is a listening B1 MCQ item. You can see a transcript of the recorded text and the 3-option question. The options are still fairly factual and concrete. However, if you look at the text, there is no single sentence that would lead you to the key if taken in isolation. Choosing the correct answer, a large stone, depends upon understanding the person's favorite museum exhibit was the stone, that this made the speaker think about making discoveries herself, and that this led her to become a scientist. This is an example of what we mean by cumulative information integrated across sentences. Getting the right answer depends upon understanding the ensemble effect of these propositions combined together. This is also a listening B1 MCQ item. However, it takes the form of a dialogue rather than a monologue. Again, getting the key depends upon understanding the interaction across multiple turns. The target information here is more factual and concrete rather than the previous example, but still depends on understanding that the man does grow some things in his back garden, but not potatoes, which he gets from the local farm. This is integrated across several turns. There is also use of paraphrasing, such as root vegetables. Potatoes are not, strictly speaking, root vegetables, so this may require some final editing, but it would be a minor point. A more scientific paraphrasing, for example, bulbous tuber, would be inappropriate in this context as it is an informal conversation. It would also doubtless be beyond the requisite K level. This would be an obvious example of inappropriate paraphrasing. But always keep authenticity and natural language in mind. Here we consider an example of a vox pop task, which are used in both reading and listening. This is taken from a Reading B1 item. There are 4 people who each express their opinion on the same topic. In this case, a new shopping centre, in the form of a paragraph. Although they share the same topic, each paragraph should be self-contained. That is to say, it should not make direct reference to comments made in another paragraph. Having read the paragraphs, the test taker is then presented with 7 opinions. The task is to decide which of the 4 people expressed the opinion. As there are 7 opinions but only 4 people, some people will be the key twice. There will be more details in the specifications. Let's take a look at a paragraph in more detail. This is person A. Person A is the key for question 2 and question 7. The person does not directly state either of the opinions in the questions. The test taker would need to demonstrate understanding at paragraph level in order to identify them as answers. For example, the idea of a new football pitch not having materialized and the idea that there being other facilities needed by the town both indicate that person A is the key for question 7. A place to exercise is an effective paraphrase for a new football pitch. Person A also acts as a distractor for question 3. She mentions the shopping centre and the shops in the centre of town, but does not indicate that the shops will be affected. As you can see, there are a number of considerations to keep in mind when producing items of intermediate level. And there are a number of challenges inherent which are specific to B1. The advice in this presentation, together with the specifications and the supporting documentation, will help you avoid the most common pitfalls. Please post any comments or questions in the forum. Thank you very much for your attention.